Friends, it's Terri Gaines. In this video tutorial, I'm going to share several cards I created with the Encircled in Nature Bundle. It's a stamp set and dies that are bundled together for 10% savings, or you can purchase them separately. You have 11 stamps in the stamp set. Some of those images can be cut out with the dies. One die will cut out the inside of the twig wreath. Another die will cut out the outside, so that gives you lots of versatility for using that. You have some beautiful dies that will create some additional decorative images and some tree dies. You have some sentiments in this stamp set and some other images that you can build beautiful projects with. In this video tutorial, my samples are using the Encircled in Nature stamp set, as I mentioned, and the sketched plaid background stamp. I've also incorporated some additional sentiment stamps. I'm using some of the images in the So Sincere stamp set along with the Layering Leaves stamp set. The beauty of this bundle is it's so versatile, so it's going to be great for many different occasions. So as I mentioned, I'm going to share lots of cards that I created, but I also want to share the tips on how I did some of these different parts of the card. I'm going to start by talking about the background stamp. The sketched plaid background is one big background stamp. You can tell that I haven't cleaned it yet. I've been using the Memento black ink pad, and I'm going to clean it when I'm all done stamping. I've been stamping some projects before I started this video tutorial, so I'm going to just clean it when I'm all done. So what I'm going to do is stamp on a basic red, a real red cardstock. I've used basic white, real red, and different colors for stamping on this. I have this cut to be 4 inches by 5 1/4. This background stamp is much bigger. It's a little bit bigger than that. So this card is going to fit in the inside of those first 2 lines on the sketch, and then inside in this direction also. So that's always good to know before you start. Instead of using the big block to use this, I keep it right in my stamp set. When I'm all done, I'll take my Simply Chamois, dampen it, and just wipe it down and clean off that stamp. So now what I'm going to do is just tap my ink on. So I always work with these background stamps, setting the rubber side up. That way it can bring my project to the stamp. So you want to tap your ink on. You want to make sure you get a good coverage. So we're going to just keep tapping until we know we have a good coverage of ink. So I've got the ink on here. Now what I'm going to do is hold this and then look for that spacing that I was talking about on the top and bottom, and the spacing on this end, and then let that fall into place. Now I want to bring some scratch paper to this, so I have cut a small piece of the grid paper, and when you do this, make sure you don't shift that cardstock. And then what I also like to do is use the palm of my hand or my fingers to get a good coverage. If you use just the tips of your fingers, it's going to be harder to make sure you get all of that with a good coverage. Now what I'm going to do is take this off, and then we will have our plaid image on our piece of cardstock. Now, as long as I have this out here, I want to show you how I created the plaid for these flowers. These flowers have a closer plaid line. So I'm going to bring in, let's see, where did I put that piece of red cardstock that I want to stamp? So here we go. I've cut a smaller piece of cardstock, and now what I'm going to do is ink this up, and I don't have to really ink up the entire background because my piece of cardstock is not going to cover the entire background. But I'm going to be cautious that I put a corner of this right in the corner of one of these plaids. So I'm going to put that down like this. I'm going to bring that scratch paper back in, cover it up, get that ink to go onto the cardstock. Then we're going to take this off. So we have that much. So now what I'm going to do is ink this again. And as I mentioned, you don't need to ink the entire background stamp. Now I put this corner right here. Now I'm going to put this corner in an open, so it goes to an open square, and place that down. cover it again. Now, if you're looking for perfection to get these lines equally spaced in both directions, that might be almost impossible. It could be done. It crosses over a little bit, but it fills it in, and it's exactly what I want for the project. As I mentioned, I'm going to clean this when I'm all done stamping today. And here I have my background, and then here I have the pieces for the flowers. So I'm going to start by working with the flowers. I cut out 2 of the flowers from the petal park punch. I'm not using this middle-sized flower. I'm using the larger one and this one. So what I'm going to do is go here and punch 2 out like that. And then I'm going to go over here and punch 2 out like this. Now you can tell that one didn't really turn out as well. That can be the bottom one because the big ones are stacked. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. This will be on the bottom and this will be on top, and no one's going to know. So we can always camouflage any imperfection. Now, how I created these flowers, and I'm going to show you the card. This is the card that I am going to be showing you how I did. So I wanted these flowers to have a unique shape to them instead of the shape you get with the punch. So what I did was I took and cut in on all these petals. Make sure you don't cut them off, but you want to cut them in and leave some spacing here, some cardstock there so you don't cut them out. Then I take a bone folder and then I burnish them both directions, down and up, to kind of break the fibers a little bit. Then I take my bone folder, on each petal I fold a petal down around it. So I fold it so I can get these petals to bend down, and I get a narrower petal for each one of those. So that's how I created these pieces, and I have 2 like that, and I did the very same thing for the small flowers. Now to assemble that one, I have this part done already. I've stamped the basic white with the Memento ink to get the plaid. I have my card layered already. I stamped my branch twig, and then I cut it out with the larger die, and I stamped a sentiment on the inside. I'm going to choose to use basic black for the greenery part of the punch. So what I have here is the bow punch. I cut this into 1.5 inch strips, and then I'm going to punch 2 of these out. I'm not going to use this, so I'm not going to waste my cardstock to punch it out. So I'm just going to have a 1.5 inch strip and put them on an angle, and I can maximize my cardstock by doing that. How I like to assemble these is I set these down and decide how you want that to overlay. And then what I'm going to do is take a regular size dimensional or standard dimensional, and I'm going to overlap these ends of my image, there we go. I've got one dimensional holding those 2 on, and then I'm going to take these 2, I'm going to attach them with a mini glue dot. So we're going to take the 2 flowers, and these, as I showed you, I cut in on both of them. I bent down the petals, and I attempted to offset the petals, and I didn't do a very good. There we go. That's a little bit better. Offset those, so I have them together with the mini glue dot, and then I'm going to put them on here with a dimensional. Then I'm going to take a mini dimensional, and I'm going to put this one to hold down that greenery a little bit. And I'm going to put this one over here to hold that greenery down a little bit. And then take the backings off. And then I'm going to attach the small flowers onto the mini dimensionals. And that's how I got the plaid to look like this. And the really beautiful embellishments to include with these cards are the adhesive back sparkle gems. You get black, silver, and gold. And I'm going to go ahead and use the black on these. I'm going to just add those. I add a little one to the little flower, and there we go. And then you can even add some of the butterflies on there. So this is how, you can see here, I added a little pop of red with that added layer. So that's how I created these flowers. And I even have one here where I have the white with the black. So, and I have some others that I'm going to show you in a moment, but let me talk about this other project I want to share. I want to give you tips on how I use these dies, the tree dies, and got the twig with the cardstock. So when you have detailed images like this, I like to use the adhesive sheets. The adhesive sheets work great for any of your images like that. You get 10 or 12 sheets. They're 6 by 12 in size, and they have an adhesive back. What I like to do is cut my sheet, adhesive sheet, to be the size of the cardstock I'm going to work with. So this is 5.5 by 6. I've cut my adhesive sheet and my cardstock the same size. What I'm going to do is bring in my Simply Scoring tool to use this for the corner. I like to put my cardstock in the corner, and then what I do is take off only one of the backings. And there's 3 across when you're 6-inch wide. So the 2 that don't have the backings off, or the side that doesn't have the backing off, what I'm going to do is put this in the corner, put my cardstock in the corner, put this in the corner, and let this adhesive piece fall on here. That helps me get my alignment. Then I'm going to go over here, take those backings off. Now I have a 6 by 5.5 inch piece of basic black that I can use for any dies that I want to cut out and have adhesive on the back. So what I'm going to do is take the small die. What you want to do is get your die cutting machine platform all set up. So I have platform 1, 2, and a clear plate 3. My adhesive is on the bottom. My cardstock color is on the top. I'm going to take the inside of the 2 dies and I'm going to place it in this corner. Now, a couple things we want to know is I'm only cutting the inside of the die out this time. I'm going to cut the outside in a couple steps. First, I want just the inside, but I want enough cardstock here that I have enough space to cut out my twig. So I'm going to put this down. Because this is not going to be utilized for anything else, I can put these dies right in here. I just make sure they don't touch and make sure they don't overlap. Put those in and put your plate down and run that all through at the same time. And then what's going to happen, this is going to be like magic. You cut that out. Now you have your trees cut out and the inside of your ring. So I'm going to move this aside for a moment. Now what I want to do is bring in the image with the basic white with the sentiment already stamped. I did this ahead of time. So now that we have the ring cut, we want to take this and add our trees to it. So I'm going to peel off the larger cluster of trees first, and I'm going to place this so it is a little bit to the left of the sentiment. And I'm going to see if I can get my trees to stand straight here. Now we have 2 smaller trees or 3 smaller trees, and all of them are straight across. I want them kind of to curve up a little bit. So I found that I like the results when I take this smaller group of trees, get the backing off. Now this tree and this tree are identical. I lay them on top. So that's how I do this for how I like the image to be. And let's see if we can get that tree top to go straight. So I got that a little bit of adhesive sitting there, so it wants to pull it that way. There we go. So now we have that. So when you do this with the adhesive sheet, you do want to burnish it. You want to get it to get a nice bond on here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece that we've cut out. Now, if I forgot to mention this, I hope I mentioned that I made sure that this little match-up tab, because those two tabs match up, was on the bottom. Now, I don't need to waste any of this. What I'm going to do is bring my paper snips in. This is where the tab was. I'm going to keep that straight, and on this edge here, I'm going to cut around here and just cut that straight. This I can use for future projects. I'm going to put that in a special bin that has my cardstock with adhesive sheets on the back. And as I mentioned, this tab was on the bottom, so I have to remember that, so I put the tab in the right place for this one. Now what I'm going to do is put this over my project. So now you can see you have some freedom of how you really want this to be. I don't want to see any tree bottoms. That's why I have them all straight. I'm going to take my backing off. Remember, we got our adhesive back on here. I'm going to take this backing off. I'm going to cover the trees. Look at this tree here. Look at your sentiment and decide how you want that to go. And I'm really happy with it right here. So I'm going to adhere that down. Now what we need to do is cut the outside. So bring your platform back in, and then what you're going to do is you're going to set this down just for guidance, just so you know where that tab is. You're going to set this one down to get that tab right by it. But then don't forget to take the top one off, or the inside one out, because we only want to cut the outside of this. If you leave that in there, you're going to cut those two apart. Put this down and run it through your machine, and you will get, let's see if I have my finished one here. I just had it. Here we go. You will get this cut out. So that's how I cut this out. Now, that took a little bit more steps to do, but if you want this end result to be like this, that is one way you can do it. Now you'll see that I also have some texture in there. I took the Timber 3D folder and I placed this in between here and ran it through and got some added texture. So that is how I created a card like this. Now there's probably other ways to do this, but that's how I've achieved that results. And as I mentioned, I have several samples to share with you. I've shared these with the flowers already. Let's put some of this aside. I do want to share a couple other things with you too, some tips that I have. So one is if you stamp your branch and you're not happy with the results, let me show you this. Let's say you're unhappy with the coverage you got in a spot, you can still utilize that. The tip I have for you is to take a clear block, take your Memento ink, and just tap a clear block into your Memento ink. You don't need a lot of ink. And then take a blender pen. A blender pen's got clear liquid in it. And go on the clear block, pick up some of that ink, and then you can color that in. And that way your ink is the very same color. If you use a blend or a marker, you're going to get a different shade of ink. So that's a great way to touch up any of your imperfections, is to use a blender pen and the ink. So let's go back to these cards. So we have these cards I talked about. Now let me talk about this card. This card, I added some colors here. What I did was I stamped on the basic white, and then I used the blends to color in the plaids. You don't need to waste your ink and color the inside because that part was covered up. And these flowers are with the Real Red cardstock, and I don't have some added stamping on here. The brushed brass butterflies are perfect addition to your cards. Here's a card to show you that if you don't have the dies, you can fussy cut around the branch. You can stamp and cut out around the flower image and then color them in with blends. And here are some samples that I have used some different colors. In this case, I used the pecan pie, and and different color cardstock. I have Granny Apple Green here. For this sample, I used some of the other dies. I did use the die for these flower dies. I stamped on or cut basic white, colored in with the blends, and then I used my blending brush to softly color in with the pecan pie. And here's another one with the floral images. Absolutely love this bundle, and it is so versatile, as I mentioned. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. On the bottom of my blog post and the bottom of my video tutorial, I'll have direct links to the online store showing you all the product I used in this tutorial. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel and let me know if you have any questions, as I said. Take care and happy creating.